Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the brewangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to episode 4. I think we're episode 4. Good to see you, Scott.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
Hi, Fred.
So we've got a lot of stuff, again, to cover today. We're going to go through some updates, the Brewers Dozen, and then we'll introduce our guest, which is another interview from the archives of A Rising Tide, which is exciting. So, Scott, maybe we start off, we jump right in. We are in the test run of an enthusiast-viewed webinar, behind the scenes look at these Great Beer State intros. So that's one thing that's exciting. But what's going on for brewers these days?
Well, we're just getting through the first week of statewide reopening at reduced capacity. I know it's meant a mixed bag for different folks. The challenge of having staff, of having food supply for those folks with food, which are many, getting your staff to wear a mask and try and interact with the guests, and maintaining spacing and reduced capacity. Lots of challenges, I think, for the brew pub tasting rooms, but I think everybody's excited to be facing those challenges and seeing their friends and guests again.
Yeah, that is a lot of extra things to manage in terms of service. And then on top of it, they've got to kind of steer the public to, the public has certain required protocols to follow. And I think that's another challenge on the whole on-premise sector is now they're responsible for herding the cats and making sure the public is sort of following the health and safety protocols as well.
Yeah, and I can easily see how it can be annoying. And the protocols are going to be addressed in not exactly the same way everywhere you go. So I would like to encourage all of you folks who are out there visiting your favorite brewery or even if it's not your favorite brewery, to be patient, be kind, be tolerant of their protocols. They're trying to do the right things to support their licensing and the regulatory environment. So it is a little aggravating, but it's where we are.
Yeah, it is where we are. And, I was just thinking we all have a lot of experience with regulatory environment, and a lot of the liquor laws in our state and really across the country sometimes seem sort of nonsensical in this time. A lot of them are looking pretty trivial in comparison to what we're dealing with now. We thought last call was hard to manage. We're in a whole new world, but hopefully that'll give us some perspective and that everybody figures it out. So on to enthusiasts. We're test running this opportunity to bring them into these podcast introductions. Anything else going on for enthusiasts or thoughts you have leading up to that?
I guess my real thought was that I hope that they discover that this is available to them when we're ready to kick it off, which will be very soon, next episode or two, probably a couple out. I hope we'll send out a message, and I'm just looking forward to hearing from some of them and getting the feedback. Hopefully it's good, but no, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of them being able to interact and reach out to us directly. So I hope some of our enthusiast community takes advantage of that.
Absolutely. It makes me think maybe this is a good time too to invite people to consider becoming an enthusiast. Can you talk about what this membership, kind of how it came to be, and what are the what does it mean to be an enthusiast? How does one do it?
Yeah, I think the program started with some of our biggest fans, and we wanted to create a special class of membership for them. In fact, it's called outright in the organization's bylaws as one of the types of membership. But it certainly has grown, and you don't have to be the single biggest fan. You just have to be a fan of craft beer, be interested, and it supports the Michigan Brewers Guild and our mission to promote and protect the industry. And it's there are fun side benefits. You get a membership card, you get a T-shirt or a little swag bag as a membership gifts, and you get invited to pre-sales for festival tickets. And you also get, I think, one of the biggest benefits is the early VIP hour at all of our beer festivals. You get a chance to get in an hour before general admission. We encourage breweries to bring special beers to tap that would be available during that hour, and it's a more relaxed time to get around to some of those places or your favorite brewery or see one of your friends that you haven't seen in a while and want to talk to. It's really a fun benefit. Obviously, we don't have that going on right at present, having announced the cancellation of our summer beer festival. But we're hoping that an inside look at the weekly podcast, will be something fun for others.
Awesome. And what's it cost to become an enthusiast?
It's $55 per year, and that includes the shipping of the materials out to you. That's included, and you can find that at our website at mibeer.com. Right now, it's under the Our Supporters tab and Enthusiast membership.
Awesome. So on to the public. Other than our suggestion for the beer consuming public to be kind to their local breweries and restaurants, any other updates, news, encouraging words for our beer loving public?
Well, again, a big, great news in that breweries have now largely reopened. Everybody's taking a little different approach to it. We did cancel the Summer Beer Festival, which would have been coming up towards the end of July, but we're looking for other ways, and we'll have some other kind of fun celebrations to celebrate July as Michigan Beer Month, even without the Summer Beer Festival. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody in Ypsilanti in 2021, the third Saturday in July and the Friday before that.
And as you look forward to
fourth Saturday in July, I think I made a mistake there.
Oh,
we run around the fourth Saturday in July.
Well, hopefully nobody's standing in hopefully nobody's standing in Riverside Park in Ypsi this year wondering whether they have the right Saturday. They'd be wrong on both. As you look forward to the two fall beer festivals, I know no determination has been made yet, but do you have a thought on timeline of that decision, or where and how people should stay tuned to see what's going to happen with those? Or has that not even materialized?
You can always we'll certainly post it on our website, and it'll be easy to find there. And we communicate it to the media in hopes that word spreads pretty quickly that way too. So we are still in wait and see mode, looking at the UP Fall Beer Festival in Marquette. That's scheduled for Saturday, September 8th, if I have that date correct. And we're kind of in wait and see. Pretty soon we have to decide whether we're going to be able to do it or not. I'm not overly optimistic, but we haven't announced a cancellation yet either. So stay tuned. Check the website or listen to the local beer buzz.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, next up is the Brewers Dozen. We're doing shout outs for 13 breweries per week, so we can get through the incredible member roll of the Michigan Brewers Guild kind of throughout the entire season here. Scott, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I am. I did just get corrected too. It's September 12th would be the date of the UP Fall Beer Festival. Yes, I'm. I I will say I did just open a beer, and so hopefully that kind of the bubbles clear my mind, and I start
Yeah, there
getting
you
a few
go.
things more
Cheers.
accurate here. But yeah, in an effort to continue to mention several members with every episode, we do have our Brewers Dozen, and I would like to call attention to the Alcona Brew House in Harrisville. Harrisville is kind of in the northeast portion of the Lower Peninsula. It's one of our newer members, and I look forward to getting there for a beer. I'll confess, I have not been there yet, so that's one that's on my list.
All right. Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about this shout out is, new or old. I know as an old timer, it's great to get reminded of some newer, younger breweries, maybe off the beaten path that I need to get to. One of those for me is Alma Brewing Company in Alma. Look forward to checking them out soon.
Yeah, and it's a great place in a restored building, and it's part of a two brewery conglomerate, including Mountain Town Brewing Company in Mount Pleasant. They've been around for a good long time. Distribute some beer, real fun place.
Nice. Next up is Dimes Brewhouse in Diamondale. I appreciate them helping me understand how to pronounce Diamondale. I'm assuming that was part of the trick there.
You get it. Yeah, Diamondale is kind of on the outskirts of Lansing, for those who don't know. Ironbark Brewing Company in Jackson. I have been there, but it's been quite a while, so I'd like to get back there too.
And we've got North Channel Brewing in Manistee. Beautiful Manistee.
Yeah, great Baraboo Brewing Company in Clinton Township. They are, I would call them one of our legacy brew pubs. I can't recall exactly when they opened, but they were early on, and they're still going.
Excellent. We've got Osgood Brewing in Granville. They are a frequent, semi-frequent stop of mine as I head around it. I end up in Granville. I'm usually running errands or picking stuff up, and they're a great spot for lunch and great people. Osgood Brewing.
So Presidential Brewing Company in Portage reminds me of a fun story. And it was over a year ago during the government shutdown, and there was news of things getting backed up with label approvals and how it was impacting the industry. And I was doing an interview, and I had just talked to the folks there. They were trying to get Presidential Brewing Company open, and they couldn't get their licensing finished and their plan was to open on President's Day, and they couldn't get their licensing finished through TTB because of the government shutdown. It was really a great story, so I sent the reporter to talk to them. Can you imagine?
Remarkable.
Not a great story for them. It's quite a thing to have stack up, though.
Really not a great story for either side of that story. Like, hey, government,
No.
How you doing? Anyways, seems lighthearted comparison to some current topics and stories. Next up, we've got Rochester Mills Production Brewery in Auburn Hills. Rochester's been around a long time. Also, a couple of different board members, a lot of guild support through that brewery between Mike Plez and Eric Brigham.
Yeah, Eric, longtime president of the guild, like yourself, Fred. Good friend and great brewery. The Maple Grille in Hemlock is really an interesting place. It's near Saginaw. I guess Hemlock is the address. I don't think there's actually a village right there. I don't know. Somebody maybe can correct me, but lots of stuff handmade, smoked meats, really fun, homey atmosphere. But the Maple Grill is a cool place to stop.
Sounds great. It's making me hungry and thirsty. We've got Three
Yeah.
Bridge Brewing Company in Menominee.
Yes, one of our newer members, and that's kind of at one of the corners of our far-flung state, I would say, Menominee. And then we'll wrap up the Brewers Dozen for anybody counting. This is number 13, Wolverine State Brewing Company, Ann Arbor. They've been around for quite a while, makers of great beers. They've got a focus on lager beers. And that wraps up the Brewers Dozen.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And shout outs to all the breweries listed and really the entire member roll. But for everybody listening, look around you. There's a great brewery close by. I can remember way back doing some math and looking at the UP and looking at the map and realizing that I believed that you were always within an hour drive from a brewery in Michigan. And that was a long time ago. No, I think I said an hour and a half. And now I got to believe we're under an hour. It'd be tough to find an hour drive that you couldn't hit a brewery. Be interesting to double check that. But as I see these breweries dotted around all these small towns, the UP being the biggest challenge, and they've had the breweries dotted across the peninsula longer than anybody.
Yeah, true. Well, maybe there's a challenge in there for somebody.
That's right. Prove us wrong. We need to sit at a table with one of those signs. You're always within an hour of a brewery in Michigan. Prove me wrong. John Linardos is our interview this week. So this is recorded in late September 2018 as we were collecting stories for Rising Tide. We had several interviews at Motor City, so he was the host for a handful of interviews there. And it was a delightful conversation, I thought. I've always appreciated John's candor and outlook, and I don't know. He's just certainly his own artistic personality. I've always enjoyed talking with him.
Yeah, John's a good friend of mine, and he's got great perspective because he gets, back to the beginning of when we started to see the re-emergence of breweries in the state. And like you said, he's an artistic force and a great character, and it really is an informative and fun interview.
Absolutely. And I felt like, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, having been around the scene for a long time and having what I thought was a pretty good understanding of sort of the sequence of how breweries came to be, I felt like I always had a little blind spot or a little confusion with that corridor and the traffic jam and Detroit Mackinac, Motor City. I didn't always understand how the moving parts fit together. And this conversation, this interview, I felt like, like it all made some more sense. And so I think that's an interesting part of this conversation. And then right next to that is just amazing to think about how young John was and kind of how he fell into this path. Not fell in, but his path to brewery ownership is remarkable in a lot of different ways. And I just enjoyed him sharing the story.
Yep, I'm sure everybody that listens will find a lot to enjoy in there as well.
And he was presented with the Tom Birds Award, which is a Brewers Guild award recognizing the pioneering spirit of brewing in our industry, and well deserved and well earned with all of his effort. Also, interesting based on his relationship with Tom and how that all pieced together. I thought that was just compelling, I guess, for lack of a better word, and full circle to think about how many years later this young, enthusiastic kid looking to help out is receiving that award, owning his own brewery, and really helping change the face of our industry.
Yeah. Well put, Fred. It's a good part of the story that we don't even get to that in the interview.
No. But I think he shares a lot of cool things. I hope everybody enjoys it. I think even though it's a couple years ago now, there's another part of the interview where he talks about, creators versus competitors and how, I think you should hear it from him in terms of what he was expressing. But I think the conversation elicits that idea of, I think there's a little bit of both of those in an entrepreneur, in a brewery owner. And it's interesting how our market sort of can swing back like a pendulum towards those two different things. And I thought it was a good point for self-reflection of like, which skill sets do I need during which part of the market, and who on my team is embodying which of these things. Re-listening to the interview, I just thought that would be helpful to a lot of young breweries trying to figure out A, how they want to make the things that they want to make, and B, or in any order, the other side is, how am I going to compete in the marketplace and make my business successful? I think John speaks to that in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Got any other thoughts before we hand it off to John?
I think now's the time. All
right. Well, here's John. Good to see you, John. We are kind of trading stories about a lot of different things, but mostly the arc of the brewing community here in Michigan and kind of the history of the guild as it came to be as well. So I'd love to start with how you got into it at all. Like, what were your early days, and when did it all start happening?
All the way back?
All the way back
would be
How did you get into making beer?
1988. Yeah. Well, I mean, like everybody, we homebrewed, right, in high school. Kind of a workaround with the drinking laws.
Yeah.
But I kind of got in it.
What year are you homebrewing in high school?
80s, early 80s.
Mid-80s,
yeah.
Early 80s.
Yeah, yep, 80, 81, 82 through 85. Okay. And then I actually got into it at the professional level, kind of, because when I was going to Wayne State, I used to work for the original owner of the Traffic Jam, Ben Edwards.
Uh-huh.
And Ben had, I didn't work in the restaurant, but I would be kind of Ben's, I would do carpentry, I did construction.
Yeah.
And then I also worked on mechanical type things too. And he also had a dairy, so I helped him make cheese. And
were they making beer at that point?
No. So with the cheese making, I got an education in processing, right?
Yeah.
The pumps and all that stuff was the same. But he did want to start making beer because he had a bakery, he had a dairy, and he wanted to make beer too. And this was 86, 87. So in 1988, they constructed the shell of what came to be Motor City Brewing Works across the street from the restaurant. So I helped, that's when I met him, was at the tail end of that construction. And then helped him build the building, and then they ran into the law issues. He couldn't operate it because at that time there was no brew pub legislation.
Right.
So,
and there were a couple of young upstart breweries that had happened. One had closed and Bell's was open, but they weren't selling beer to customers by the pint.
Right.
Based on the law.
Right.
So, but you only have like 2 breweries that have opened in the last however many years at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Chelsea, right? Was
right, yeah, that's Ted was telling us that story.
Yeah.
He closed in 84, Larry opens in 85.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and Ben tried to open in 88.
Yeah. But he's building this with the idea, I'm assuming, that his restaurant model is going to continue, that he wants to find a way to sell it to the consumer directly. Is that
right?
True?
He never wanted to go into distribution whatsoever. He wanted to make beer for his customers.
And thus that law becomes the big blocker.
Yep. Yeah. He wanted to make beer for the customers, just like he was making cheese for his customers.
Yeah. So then what?
So that's when Tom Burns was reading about this, and who was an attorney who had gone to law school on the West Coast. So he was very well aware of what was happening because he was out there with the beginning of the Boulder Brewing Company and all of that. So when Tom moved back to Detroit, which he was originally from, he came by the restaurant and said, "Hey, I'd like to help you out with this litigation." So that's when, they started trying to get some legislation passed to allow for brew pubs. And of course, that history is pretty well documented.
Yeah.
But when that legislation went through in '92, it didn't help Ben because he had built the brewery across the street. It wasn't under the same roof as the Class C license. So he still couldn't operate it, right? So he got
without getting a whole nother license.
Right, which he couldn't own because you can't have a brewery manufacturer's license and a Class C license.
Yeah.
So he ended up leasing it to Tom, who started Detroit and Mackinac Brewery.
Right.
And Tom really wanted to...
In 92?
Yes, so it was 1992. And Tom wanted to be a brewer anyway. He was an attorney. He always called himself a recovering attorney.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was getting out of college. So I had already been out, but I was still working for Ben. That was around 91. And then I said, hey, I'm going to go over and help Tom get Detroit and Mackinac going. So I was vice president, and it was Tom's company. And we started Detroit and Mackinac. So we made Canfield Ale and Tom's Irish Red. Those were our first two beers. And then we made the wort for the traffic jam. So Ben still got his brew pub license, but we'd make the wort here, and he would come by in his dairy tanker. We'd pump the wort into the tanker, he'd take it across the street, and he'd ferment it in his cheese vat.
Wow.
So that was the relationship for years until they sold the restaurant. But sadly, Tom had the recurrence of cancer, and we were only into it for about a year and a half. He passed away in '94.
Wow.
So at that point, I had been sidetracked enough. So I said, hey, Ben, how about I take over the lease on the building and start Motor City? So I started Motor City in '94. And in '99, he sold me the real estate. He retired, and that's when we added the tap room and just kind of kept evolving. So it's been a work in progress for 25 years.
Yeah.
30 years, really.
So those years, were, the landscape had to look entirely different than it did now. So, I don't know, what were your hopes in terms of what did you think was possible?
I thought Ghetto Blaster would take over the world, man.
Yeah.
I was going to be a rock star with my own beer.
I mean, when you're taking that lease over, what was kind of your perspective in terms of what do I got to do to make this work, and what's the big upside?
Yeah, I was an idiot.
Because you weren't quite Ghetto Blaster yet, were you?
No, Ghetto Blaster was '97.
Yeah.
And that was when I realized, I'm stuck in this world. Better figure out a way to have fun. What intrigued me the most was I saw a whole new industry.
Eastern market.
Right on, for sure. That's what intrigued me the most. I mean, I'm a little different than most brewers in that my first passion was not the beer. It was the industry. I mean, I have tons of passion for our products and our industry and what we create. But that's also from the creative side, where I just like to make things. But where I really got excited was, wow, this is the beginning of a whole new industry. Nobody's doing this.
Right.
So that really was what kind of fired my jets.
That also is interesting too, because when you're thinking about this is a whole new industry, that means that new startups and other breweries opening is feeding that, is fuel to that fire, rather than, I'm in early. I can be the one that does all this stuff. Yeah. But I mean, so from 92 to say, I don't know, 95, 96, you start seeing a bunch of breweries open. What did that feel like? And was that confirming your belief that, hey, this is starting to go?
There was that. There was also, it was very challenging. So I kind of welcomed some beers so I could commiserate. Yeah, because it was rough, man. I mean, the industry didn't take hold right away.
Yeah.
The whole reason there's a tap room here at Motor City is because that was my exit strategy. At 1999, I didn't see it happening at all. I was like, there's no way. We'd go into bars and try to hand sell the product, and you'd get we already have a micro beer, it'd be Blue Moon. And that went on for years. It was really, in our backyard, we got a lot of support, but the distributors weren't on board. So yeah, it was affirming, but it was also, it was challenging. So it was cool to have other people that you could relate to. Yeah. And of course, with the Guild, everyone was helping each other back in those days too. I mean, I was borrowing pumps from Scott King and grain from.
Did you feel like that was present prior to the Guild though, or did the act of coming together as a Guild, did that help fan those flames?
No, I think that was already there, and the Guild came out of that.
And so the Guild amplified the sort of helpful, organized, collaborative nature that was there.
Yeah. It was it really, in the beginning days, it was collaborative right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Everybody, even other breweries. I remember I bought kegs from Rogue. And, of course, it was hand to mouth, and it took me, I got way behind on paying them. And, I'd get a call every now and then, hey, you owe us money. And it's like, yep, I know. I'm going to, it's okay, just get it to us. So it wasn't even just a Michigan thing. It was an industry-wide thing. All the breweries were kind of, it was a team spirit.
So do you remember the calls to come together and start what became the Michigan Brewers Guild?
I do.
And just tell me what that was like in your world.
Well, it was blurry. Really was blurry.
Yeah, we may have started this.
I think we met
storytelling a little late. We're all starting to get some blind spots.
Should have been around. Yeah, we should have done this 10 years ago. I think we met. Was the first board meeting at Rex's house or something?
No, he wasn't a board meeting yet, but I mean, I'll help start the process because I'm getting the story several times.
I remember we first met at a bar.
Yeah, so he called around, and then we all met at Hamilton Street Pub in Saginaw because it was neutral territory.
Right,
we could all do it. And then the next meeting where we voted to establish the thing was in Michigan Brewing Company in Weberville. And then I remember there was another meeting with the attorney. Was I think somewhere in Detroit, but I don't remember where. Or maybe it was Auburn. I don't know. But I mean the pieces and parts is one thing, but I just wonder what your thoughts were when Rex reached out, or when you heard that, hey, this group is getting together and looking to form this organization. What were your instincts or memories of that experience?
Well, I was definitely all for it. I was excited about the idea of it getting more organized, and us. One of the things I liked about it was being able to sit at a table with people that were more sophisticated in the business world than I was, and also just the exchange of information. So there was that, but there was also the fact that this thing was starting to gel. We were getting more mature as an industry, and to me that was the whole guild was a reflection of like the next step of an industry getting more mature.
Yeah.
So it was a learning experience for me, but it was also kind of back to that. It felt good to have other players in there, man, because you don't want to be the only person occupying a space in the business world.
We just talked to Ted, who was that person in this state, and they got their ass handed to them, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on a new product now that's outside of the beer category, that these RTDs, and it's kind of like, it's and when you said, also when you were talking about being the first one in, that's not necessarily so awesome either. I mean, we treaded water, but I got really burnt out those first 7-8 years. The people that came in 2005, they rocketed right out of the gate. And it's like we treaded water for a long time.
So you were on the board early, and you were part of those shepherding those early festivals. You got any? What was that like? So Rex was involved as an executive director and I think coordinating the festivals, but you were a board member that I think oversaw. Tell me what your role was.
President of festival.
Yeah. And so tell me I don't know. Tell me what that was like, putting on the first couple festivals.
I had some experience in doing that with the Dallies and the things, the festivals we'd done in Detroit. But that one was fun because it was a blank slate and some missteps in the beginning, but I mean, you know, our first one, we had a turnout of 800 people, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
Now it's 14,000. But you know, doing it in Livonia, the first spot was pretty interesting because it was. In fairness to Livonia, it was pretty progressive for them, you know, because they were like, wait, you're going to have a festival that's just based on drinking beer, and drinking in our park.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like, yeah.
And I think those things had been happening around the country to some degree, but
not here.
We're presenting something that there's nobody on city council that's like, oh yeah, that's just like that other beer festival. Like
city council was all for it. The police department was had some issues. But it was fun. I mean, it was just like our industry, right? It was all bootstrap. Yeah. I mean, I remember that there was just certain things we hadn't thought about, you know, like I forgot. There was one of my favorite memories on the first one was I don't know if it broke or we didn't accommodate for it, but we didn't have a sound system. So we took, I forgot whose car, but we put a microphone onto the stereo speaker in the car and ran it through the PA. And that was the ambient music. And of course the tornado came through. Or whatever.
That was year 2.
Was that year 2?
Yeah. I had a funny story. I doubt you'll remember it because of how the story goes, but I was relating to I used you as a metaphor for like, you know, we were willing to like, there were people that you didn't expect or necessarily that were, you know, joining in to the point of helping the group over their own operation. And what I remember, the visual example of that was right when the first festival started, like you were solo and you'd set your jockey box up and something had happened where the handles had fallen forward. So we're standing there and your beer is literally just pouring out of your jockey box on the table, but you were vice president of festivals, so you were God knows where. We were like, we got to close, you know, John's handles for fuck's sake. And it just cracked me up. Like, it just seems like this.
That was my technique for closing early.
Yeah, this visceral example of like where we were, where it was very unveiled chaos. But we were doing it.
Yeah. It was trial by fire.
And I feel like, you know, you were in so early that a lot of these breweries are opening after you've opened, and you're a young guy who's now, you know, not only lost Tom as a friend and a mentor, but you're also all of a sudden taking on a business. That's a pretty wild path. Did you have any relationships with breweries outside of Detroit? And I guess I'm kind of leading this towards, I felt like personally one of the benefits of the festival and the guild was that we met people from different parts of the state that how in the world did you meet them otherwise when you're trying to start a business? Did you feel that change your worldview at all?
Well, you know, the first breweries that I were hanging with were in Wisconsin, because as Detroit and Mackinac, we did the God, what's it called now? It was their festival at the time.
Oh, Great Taste of the Midwest.
Yes, and at the time it was just beginning too.
Yeah.
When we got in there was maybe their third or fourth one.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, it's really funny because I'd go to those things and you could tell these people all knew each other through just how they interact and all of that. Yeah. And it's like, wow, that really was. I was watching what we were.
I think my first Great Taste was '93.
Okay, yeah.
I was working for a
So
import.
we were there on the because Larry was there in '92 or 90, maybe it was '92 and 93.
And then he brought me up '93. Okay, so it wasn't his first.
All right, no, because they all knew him. So man, maybe you were there when I was there.
Yeah, probably.
So really, it was those guys, and but there weren't a lot of people to compare notes with and ask questions. I mean, right. I would. It was kind of a lonely landscape at the beginning. That's why I. But
then I feel like when we pounded, because we were all volunteer and we were bootstrapping these festivals, I don't know. My sense was like that's when we had relationships with, like meeting you and realizing, I know people in Detroit. We know breweries that are dotted all over the state now because we fucking survived a weekend in Livonia together and didn't go to jail. And didn't bankrupt this fledgling organization. I felt like the relationships were one of the things that came out of it that I still cherish today.
Oh, for sure, and I still do. I mean, even not even just in the manufacturing side, but just the industry side. Like
Right.
Bruce Wright was over at Rave. You know, there's a guy who just eats, lives, sleeps, breathes. You know, the industry, and we're good friends to this day. You know, talk to him all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a little off track, but yeah, there was a lot to the relationships in the early days that really helped me anyway, personally, get through it, because it was a challenge, man.
Yeah.
It sucked in the beginning.
Yeah.
The salad days really blew.
Do you have a sense of how those formative years of us deciding to come together and get to know each other, how that affected the marketplace and how it affected the views of some of these people that weren't necessarily early adopters, like the wholesalers, the retailers, the consumers? Do you think that the existence of a strong community, did it change people's minds?
I think it helped. I think it helped establish our industry and educate people. You know, because strength in numbers, blah. But we got more sophisticated too in our messaging and in our production and our quality and the variety. So I think that, I think that's all critical. I think that was all a huge help. But it was kind of an evolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if we, I think all of that. I don't know if we set out for that from the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that naturally happens too out of collaborations and you learning from someone else and then learning from you and then happy accidents.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely started to lay the groundwork to get rid of those, we already carry a micro beer, responses from the retailers.
Yeah.
They started to get wise to it, and then the support followed suit.
And that it was bigger than one. It's bigger than one producer telling them one thing.
Yeah,
this is a sea change happening.
Right.
I think that couldn't happen from one voice.
No, it couldn't. And the breweries represent the fabric of the communities they're in. And so you're getting back to what you were saying, that you're getting representation from all over the state. And then you get these great stories like, I was in Detroit, or, when I'm up north, I'll be in Boyne City, and they were down in Detroit, or, I'm up there, and it makes everybody closer.
Yeah.
And that also, all of that helped us sell more beer during the, when it started to take hold. And then the distributors actually kind of followed suit too.
Yeah.
To a degree.
You're reluctant to it.
To a degree.
God damn it. I'm drawn to this other thread here for a second, because it's like I knowing you well and knowing a lot of people that kind of share these ideals, the brewing community is made up of a lot of independent creative thinkers and artists from one shape or another. It's people that, especially people that have been in it for a while, they were creative enough and brave enough and sort of insane enough to just follow a path and say, I don't know, but figure it out. And that's very much of a artist's ethos, I think.
Jump in and figure it out later.
Yeah, and I know that you're an artist in a number of ways, and you've been involved in music and physical arts and brewing and this industry is another sense. And so the question I want to ask is that I think that that's a common thing, that when we do these things, that we're also celebrating community and collaboration. These words keep coming up and over. And I think that it's a unique lens to look through to say, here's a collection of some of the most independent thinkers that wouldn't follow a path or read a script or read a manual, but they're also touting the strength of working together. Mm-hmm. And so how would you describe the intersection between the independent creative path of entrepreneurism, and how does that overlap with the strength of remembering to join up with your fellow industry community people? Because by nature we're not necessarily joiners, as entrepreneurial, creative people are often striking out. They want to follow their idea.
Right.
But yet the same group of people are championing, come together and work together. And so what does that reverberation look like?
Yeah, to me, that's kind of natural because you're right. These are a lot of independent thinkers trying to do different things, but they are in one industry, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's a little different than the arts, where you can just live in the woods and not collaborate and still be successful. But in our industry, there's all these other dynamics go along with it. We're all working through the same wholesaler system. We're all being represented by the same retailers, so we're finding ourselves in the same gallery, so to speak.
Right.
So in that sense, it's a little different than the
reality is different, but I'm saying their overall thought process borrows from that world or is born in that world.
Well, I think
then in this world we find a strength of working together.
To me, that's just a similarity. That's kindred spirit, right? I mean, you like to brew beer? I brew beer too, and then bam, conversation takes off. You know, you're going to be talking about everything from equipment to ingredients. You know? So to me, that's just natural. Where two like minds are going to start exchanging, thoughts and ideas on things. And with that, I think again, that's why I think it was so natural for our industry to have God, I hate to say it, but in the beginning, a kumbaya type of attitude, where let's work together, on this, in the beginning, there were things like I wouldn't try to knock a Bell's handle, I wouldn't try to knock, you weren't going after another craft handle, you were trying to add another craft handle to the tower. So there was just a real sense of oneness, as opposed to, business, we're in it to win it, It was definitely more, in my world, it felt more in the creative community than in the business community. I think that's changed a little bit, but in the beginning.
So tell me about that. Like, how have things changed both in terms of obstacles or threats, and then what are the challenges to that sense of community that we're facing today?
Well, I mean, you just have the proliferation of breweries now. I mean, there's a lot of beer out there. And just as a consumer, I look at the shelves and it's like, why, who needs me? It's like there's just so much out there. And with that, a lot of people have gotten into it, not from where we all came from, where it was just something fun, something that we were passionate about. People are getting into it now because it's a business. And they're in businesses, a lot of people have that mindset that it needs to be profitable, it needs to perform, you have to do whatever it takes for it to perform. So if that means running over the next guy, you run over the next guy, Mm-hmm. So that's one of the downsides of the maturity of our industry getting into it, becoming a mature market, right? Mergers, acquisitions, competition. It's the reality of our world. So that part of things, if you're a creator and not so much a competitor, this atmosphere is not as fun as it used to be. And then again, when I talked about mergers and acquisitions, we've got the big guys. So we've woken the sleeping giant.
And they've co-opted some of our ammunition.
It's getting blurry now. I don't know who. Yeah.
Before an IPA meant you were buying from our community. Now it doesn't.
I'm sorry?
If a consumer was buying an IPA before, they were buying it from a member of our community.
Right.
That's not true anymore.
No. Sometimes I don't know who I'm buying it from.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a challenge. For sure.
Yeah. And then with that, it's back to they might want to take your tap handle. You might have another microbrewery going after your knobs.
Yeah, and some of that's contextual. That sometimes you're selling to a bar now where all they have is craft handles. So for you to sell your handle, somebody from your community is coming off because they don't have 10 light beers anymore.
That's right.
We were fighting a different battle of attrition before in terms of we had a lot of people to get off the taps.
Yeah.
And if we're selling into our circle of adoptive, the retailers that have already adopted our mission, well, now it's fighting inside the same sandbox because we don't have those unless you're going into new retailers, which I think is part of what needs to be next, is continuing to get into spaces we're not.
Yeah, there's always room for opportunity and growth, but it's much more challenging now.
Yeah.
But it was challenging in the beginning too. Now it's like a different type of challenge.
Yeah. So part of the role of this is we want to help educate, inspire, share with today's collection of breweries and brewery personnel. Looking at today's context and some of the things that we love about our industry that we think have made it what it is. What do you think is the invitation or the call to action for breweries that are less than 5 years old? What can they do to shore up the brewing community we want to keep?
I think that it's all still there, the camaraderie, and especially, the playing field is going to change, but you're still going to always have the small brewery, which I think is actually the most viable, and with that's going to come it's going to come with everything we talked about, the wanting to reach out and talk with fellow brewers and collaborate. Yeah, we still do that here. It was a little while back. It was some fundraiser, but was it Brown Iron Brew Pub? Came over here and brewed a batch, and I think, and then also they bring in some fresh excitement, right? Because I'm not that guy. I'm Mr. Bitter. I'm like, what the hell? Don't do that. Just buy ours. So I think that's really critical to bring in to still continually have that fresh energy and that spirit.
Yeah.
I kind of lost my train of thought on that, but that's where I feel good about it. I still get phone calls from people that are about to open a brewery, just getting out of college. I just had one like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and the first 5 minutes is you tell them to think about something else. And then if they're still on the phone, you'll give them some encouraging advice.
Yeah.
Well, shit, if you're still in it after all that, well, all right.
You're right.
Why don't you come on out?
Yeah. Don't count on the wholesalers, and if you're selling by the glass, location. But it was cool. I enjoyed, it's a role reversal because that's what I used to do. But it was cool that that's still just continuing on, and it happens at every level. I've done the same thing. It was a few years ago. I called Alan Newman out of the blue from
Magic Hat.
Magic Hat, thanks. My place was facing some decisions, and his name had come up a couple of times. I just made a cold call to him, and he was a cold email to him, and he shot me back an email. He's like, I can give you an hour on such and such a day. Give me a call. And he was awesome, So that's all part of what we're talking about. What industry can you do that in,
Yeah.
I love that.
And as long as we keep doing it, I think it keeps a lot of things in place.
Yeah, that's
keep paying
how I'm trying to answer your question,
and keep getting people to both ask when they need it and then share when somebody asks.
And not hang up on kids when they're... I try not to step on their dreams.
Unless they need it.
I still do it.
What do you look back over these years and everything that's happened? I don't know. What do you think having a healthy brewing community has meant to our communities, big, little, state, region, neighborhood? What do you think the success of our brewing industry has put into the world?
Well, I think that word community is what that's what I was saying. The part of the cornerstone of how I view the craft community is that they are a fabric of the communities that they're in.
Yeah.
And they amplify that, they promote it, and they educate the outside world of where they're from, and I think that's an asset to the communities that they're in when it's done genuinely and correctly. But I think that's a huge asset to communities. I mean, we see it, right? Beer tourism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people go from town to town.
Each ring out, because now we have those people representing their communities means we have differences and we have reasons to travel and we have reasons, like all of a sudden we have personality again instead of Applebee's stamped out 100 times across the state.
And we get it all the time here because we're getting a double whammy with the resurgence and the renaissance of Detroit City proper. So we have a lot of people coming, and then with what's happened in Michigan with ours, our industry has come in, we've blown up. So we get it both ways. We get people visiting Detroit and also visiting the craft brewery in Detroit. And it's awesome, because most of our employees actually live in Detroit. They're residents, so it's great for the guest, and it's great for us to be able to share and meet people from outside.
And it seems like through the year, I mean, there's a number of things I'm sure, and we don't have time in this conversation to wax on the whole history of Detroit, but real thumbnail sketch, it's like through Detroit's darkest times, or at least like coming out of the last 20 years, it seems like beer and brewing has been a pulse that has kept beating through that time and had some vibrancy both in terms of consumers and operators and makers and real estate that it's been one of the things that's added value to a city that really needed some movement. Yep.
Well, you're right. And if you're talking about like the Eastern Market breweries like Stroh's and Global and
this neighborhood too. I mean, you're talking late 80s and the Pulse started here before they were able to make beer in a neighborhood that was probably not a lot of people were eyeing up for growing it up.
No. No, it's pretty dark.
And I think you look around and I think that's happened quite a bit, especially in Detroit.
Yeah. It's like, Detroit's like whiplash now, man. Every week there's something that's blowing up. But and with that, we've got a lot of breweries now too. I mean, we've got 2 in the Eastern Market. We've got, and a lot of the other cities are coming into town, right? We got Founders here now, Jolly Pumpkin. So it's been a real. It's been pretty shocking to watch the speed of the change in the last few years around here.
What do you hope for, either in the community or with Motor City? Like looking ahead?
God, I don't know.
Day off?
Retirement? Yeah. Well, we're looking at opening another location, right? That's what I left you this morning. But we're doing it in Detroit. We're going into a neighborhood. We're kind of starting all over again, man. I'm doing a full circle. I can't believe I'm doing it. But we're going into a neighborhood that it's a great neighborhood. But it's underserved in regards to entertainment amenities and restaurants, things like that. So for us, that's our goal. Kind of take our brand, our ethos, and do it all over again on the west side of the city.
Answer the call.
So yeah. So for me, I mean, my hope is that we can just stay relevant, and sustainable, because we're going through another challenging period. I mean, I don't know. I think you'll hear it from more and more people as time goes on, but it's real work again.
You see light at the end of that? You see it as a period to just kind of tighten up and get through until the next wave?
I don't think anything's going to fail catastrophically. The category is here to stay. We did it. You know what I mean? We established it.
Yeah.
So part of me is like, okay, that's done. What's the next project? And it might not be beer. I don't know what it is. But I mean, I definitely have a sense if Motor City closed tomorrow, which would be wonderful. I would be cool with, wow, we did it.
Yeah.
I mean, we did more than I ever even expected, right? Because not only did this place make it, but this whole industry popped up, and it's here to stay. There'll be a shakeout. There has to be.
Yeah.
But that's just true. We're just dealing with natural stuff that any industry that's getting mature deals with. So we're here now, and there'll be a little bit of a shakeout, but There'll still be new players, and the old players will still be around. Most of them, some of them.
Yeah.
But I think that the future will be the small corner brewery. You know, kind of going full circle.
Yeah.
Because we're actually going full circle pre-prohibition now too, right? We had more breweries than we did pre-prohibition.
Yeah.
And now they're getting gobbled up. Yeah. But again, we established the industry. You know, the craft category is here. It's not going away.
We have a consumer that is
it's educated now.
That's educated and is going to would fight the change that happened in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knew what was happening, I don't think, and they also didn't think they could do anything about it. And now, if the same sort of sea change started to happen as happened then, consumers would revolt.
Oh yeah, because their palates are more sophisticated than they've ever been. You know, in the history probably of beer. Yeah, it's just like what's happening in the food category.
Yeah.
You know. So that part's been awesome, and that takes us right back to the beginning of this conversation. It was really exciting to be in the beginning of that movement.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all you did, man. And you know, you did it.
Made sense a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for sitting with us.
Thanks for caring, Fred.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.